Okay, so I believe we are live streaming, waiting for YouTube.
You are live on Channel 8 and YouTube.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, April 6th. This is a special meeting of the Templeton Advisory Committee. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right, so I watched the meeting from the other night. One thing, I did some research. Our selectmen's administrators not getting a 13% raise. I don't know where that 13% came from, but it's not 13% because the stipend was only $2,500.
I'll have to beg to differ you
Okay.
before we begin. Just let me review a few things because I've been asked questions by folks, and I understand there was a lot of discussion on social media.
Okay, so I thought I was addressing that, but okay, go ahead.
I want to point out a couple of things. We get the budget versus actual end of year, which is where it shows how much we budgeted, how much we spend, and how much is left over.
I'm aware of that.
Right. And for folks that are watching now, I'm saying this, Tony.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I know you should know this already. And anybody can end up going. It's on the Templeton website. It's on the left-hand side. It's called Reports and Presentations. If you click on that, it'll show reports. If you go down to the finance, and if you click on the fourth quarter of FY 2020, it's a report from the finance team. It's on page 4 where the BVA starts, and that's where you'll see the $1,300 that we talked about, and the reason it came up.
No, 13%.
I'm talking about the supply.
That's not what I was talking about.
I understand that. I'm talking about something else. I will end up addressing that, Tony, if you give me a moment.
Okay, well, all right, well, fine.
Please.
I started talking about something, and then go ahead.
Yep. And it shows the $1,300 that we showed in the supply. It's there. And the reason it came up was that the percentage of use was very low, and it highlighted an issue, and maybe that wasn't being used. If you look at all the rest of the departments, a majority of them used at least 75% or better on the whole thing. Now, to address the other issue about budgets, by the way, it's good to have transparency. We've had the report from the finance team from FY17 all the way up until Q2 of this year. Now, to address the other side about budgets, if you end up going on the Templeton website and you go to the administrators, at the bottom on the left-hand side, you see town budgets. If you click on that, it'll show you the budget of 19, 20, 21, and 22. Let me just go talk to the numbers that you were talking about. In FY19, that particular position was paying $19.38. In FY20, that position was paying $20.40, which is about 5.5% increase. FY21, it shows that position was paying $23 or 12.75%, roughly 13%. And if you look at the FY22 budget, it shows $25.93. That's the difference. There is 12.74% or almost 13%.
I'll verify all those too.
I'm not going to disbelieve you, but so So the information I have is before the increase, the annual salary was $49,658. The floating hours and overtime are not guaranteed and could possibly not at all be used depending on the workflow. So 13% of 49,658 would be a raise of 6,400, or an hourly rate of 27.97. The hourly rate is $25.93, so it spread that $2,500 out. And so the original hourly rate was $24.75. If you add the $2,500, that's where the
Tony,
$25.93 comes
If I
from.
may, Tony, that's where I think you're in error. The 2475 includes a raise.
Yeah, so right.
And then we put 2,500 on top of it.
I agree with that, Bob. We did,
Okay.
because remember at the April 1st meeting, they wanted to give her whatever the raise was, 2-3%. I don't recall what it was.
Yeah. It ended up being a $3 raise is all
No, and I know, but I don't know if you recall, Bob, but we talked about the stipend, and not one person disagreed with the fact that for all the things Holly does, and I guess I shouldn't really mention her by name, nobody disagreed with the fact that she should get the stipend. People just didn't like the fact that it was a stipend.
I did.
I did also.
Let me rephrase it.
I did also.
Most people, with some exceptions, didn't disagree with the fact, but they just didn't like it called a stipend, so they rolled it into salary. That's my recollection of what happened.
Yeah, I was going to say there was a lot of discussion going round and round and round and put an end to it. Jeff said, just turn it into a thing. And I'm not pointing out Jeff either, but that's just what happened at the budget meeting.
Yeah, right.
And, that was because I brought up the fact, I was the person who brought up the fact that I disagreed with it initially.
Okay.
Which
Which is certainly your right to do.
And I don't just disagree with that one. I disagree with all uncontracted raises that are above cost of living increases this year. Every single one of them, not just Holly's.
Okay. Certainly you're right to do so.
That's our job to take and question that.
Well, yes, it's your job you could say, yes, it's our job to question, but I think you have to understand the duties and stuff to say, hey, if we can afford to give somebody a little more than cost of living, this is just my opinion. This is just my opinion, that you don't necessarily sit there and say, so to me, if you're giving people a merit raise based on their merit, that's above the cost of living. So cost of living it's not guaranteed by any means, but you always try to give at least a cost of living raise.
Well, just to take add a little more to this. I ended up digging into this whole thing, not only for our budget. I spent up from this morning till this afternoon till about 4:00 looking at other towns which I could find a budget and to take and see what that particular position paid. Don't shake your head. You haven't even heard my
head. I'm going to shake my head because did you find someone that does the exact same duties, the exact same amount of hours as our person in that position does?
Well, the positions that I found were 40 hours, and we're paying for 38 too. So I mean, this and so by the way, I don't want to hear about this. There's other positions. Let's end up doing the salary thing. They paid $20,000 to take and end up looking at the compensation package to take and end up for all employees, and that should be the guiding light for anybody as to what their job is. I mean, I ended up in digital, ended up going through an extensive on every job, and we ended up having to take and end up rating those jobs based upon what people did. And you'll be surprised that in some cases, yes, it did go up. The job descriptions changed. In others, they stayed the same, and some changed the other way. And it outside company, and it was. I mean, I had to go through and rate all these things along with other managers and supervisors. So
Will, but my point is, unless you looking at other towns are fine to say, okay, we have someone who is a similar position, but if you don't know all their duties, and in fact, I couldn't say that I know all of our person's duties and everything that they do, then it's not an apples to apples comparison.
well, any job description I've ever seen for anybody always has the caveat as or as this or as required. So that covers a lot of ground as to what somebody does. So that to me is a mute point. I'm sorry.
If I might, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chairman, sorry. Sorry, 6 feet, Tony.
All right.
No, like I said, I think from my perspective, we're getting way off track because I don't want to sit here and critique every person because my issue is not necessarily, and I mean, I have issues, but that's not what this is about. This is about dollars and cents and taxpayers' money during a pandemic while we're using one-time funds to balance the budget. I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay.
And that's just where I stand on it. It has nothing to do with merit, and it didn't when it was brought up to me. That became a story later on, and I, prefer not to get into the personal stuff because that is a whole nother issue, and really, we don't want to go there.
No.
But just dollars and cents. I don't see how back-to-back 12.75% raises for an employee, and especially walking into a pandemic, are justified.
Okay.
That's just me, and it's not really going to change.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah, but that's what they're presenting is just that. There's anywhere from what I think it's a low of, just in town hall, let's say as a group, it's between 6 and 13%, or so, 6 and 12.75. So, that's all above the cost of living, the whole kit and caboodle. So, that's why that was brought up, Tony, and it wasn't, to pinpoint a person, but
More of a philosophy.
we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I looked into that after Bob brought it up to verify. I trusted him, but I went and verified. And when I saw a back-to-back, a double digit, I have problems with that. In all the years that I worked for a company, that was a rarity to ever see anybody with a double digit, let alone a double digit.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
So I mean, that's.
I want to say something.
Of course.
I agree with Bob. All right. Yeah, we are in a pandemic. The pandemic did not just land on the school. What we do this year is going to affect next year and the year after. Where is the money coming from? Using what we were warned so long ago, avoid using one-time money to balance the budget. We've had to do it at times, but it comes back to bite us. There are people in our community that are having a hard time. And I think you have to keep an eye on them. The advisory board's job is to work for those people. And that is what I intend to do.
It's to work for the whole town, though. And I do believe.
But it is the only oversight that the people in town have.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's not for, I don't believe the advisory committee is just for a set group of people in town. It's for everybody. I do think you have to pay special attention to those that are most vulnerable, because they're affected more by it than others. But our job is for the entire town, not just a sector.
Yes, it is. And there are people with a lot of money and it isn't
Ain't
gonna
me.
suit them one bit. When they get their tax bill, they just write out a check. But we have a lot of elderly people in here. We have a lot of younger people and not everyone's had a job.
No,
You
you're
are
right.
very fortunate. You can work remotely. There are waitresses. There are people that work at Dunkin's. There are
No, I know.
people everywhere.
No,
Mr. Chair-
I fully get it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, we already discussed this at the last meeting, and I don't want us to get bogged down again this time here. Let's start with the rest of the budgets that we haven't reviewed. So if we can, please,
Okay, well, I don't know where you left off, so.
it was the fire budget.
Yeah, the fire and EMS budget was the last motion made, and then we stopped for the evening. So we should be on emergency management. Is that correct?
Yeah, and oh, by the way, just after we voted, I tried to take and end up finding other communities because it came up about separating the fire and the EMS, and there was a community that I did find. I think I found a couple of communities on all the ones that I looked at today. So that's not out of the realm to take and end up breaking that budget into fire and EMS.
Okay,
So-
but that wouldn't that be up to the Board of Selectmen to?
Yeah, yes,
say that?
it was brought up to them and it's really up to them. We had a discussion on it and I wanted to verify that we weren't the only ones doing it. And that's why I'm just bringing that
Okay.
up.
Everything we do is basically a recommendation or a suggestion to the Board of Selectmen. Anyway, we have no authority to do anything. We're advice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
hopefully they listen and, because I do think that we do come up with some good ideas at times.
Debbie, you said emergency management next.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I have on the Excel spreadsheet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So on their first, the 20, so I have 230.51. I don't have anything in there. I hate when they reduce these things. I gotta.
Oh, you're gonna make them bigger. No, so we essentially last time, Tony, just asked if anybody had any questions about
Okay.
the emergency
All
management
right.
budget.
Anybody have any questions or comments about emergency management?
No, I didn't have too many. I still think that someday when we get settled down, I'd like to see a lot of the supplies kind of straightened out because everybody and his brother's got them.
I agree with you, Beverly. I don't understand why
Crazy.
at town hall they don't have a central supply closet that, you know, they can put in and say, hey, I need 7 reams of paper for the year, or I need 20 stamped envelopes or whatever based on things, and have it in one place.
Yeah.
There's nothing saying they can't do an initial order and then maybe halfway through the year or quarterly look at the inventory and make another order. There's places around that, you know, you order today, you get it tomorrow.
Yeah, that's why we went to Staples, so they can end up trying to reduce the cost a number of years ago. I don't know if they still do that.
I don't know if
If they-
Staples does, but there's places like WB Mason and
If
Whatever.
they had a spend plan, Tony, they could do that very well.
I've been asking for one for 3 years, Bob.
We've been talking-
Speaking of that, Tony, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you seem to be well versed in spend plans. Is it possible for you to take and end up doing a spend plan on the advisory budget to take and give them an idea as to
No, because you don't worry about the $1,000 things or $2,000, Will. And in our big number one, the emergency fund, it's not predictive. So a spend plan is really based on predictive amounts you have to spend, like a salary. You know, every month for Department X, I spend $5,000 on salaries. But what you're looking for is those big outlays of like a one-time thing of say $10,000. Okay, so when we look at the budget and budget versus actuals, you know, they're not spending, all of a sudden there's a big spike of $10,000. If you had a narrative of a spend plan to go with it, you'd know, oh, had to buy this, or they had to pay for this fee, or whatever the case may be. And it's just basically kind of a plan on how they spend their money throughout the year. But you're really looking for those big outliers. You're not really concerned with the low dollar ones.
Yeah,
It's-
but look at, on EMS, $1,700 for office supplies and general cleaning. That's a lot of money for one department. You know, I'll add it up someday when I got nothing else to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you just use the budget versus actuals, Bev, no, I agree. And I think, so what I haven't liked over the past 3 years is they're all around 4 or 5,000. I forget whatever the number is for their supplies. It's been consistent every year, but I find it hard to believe that everybody's exhausted all the supplies they've bought each year.
I know.
I mean, because sometimes you might go through a bunch of paper, and then other times maybe not. Like, I think this year they went through probably a lot more envelopes because they had to send a lot more stuff out.
Well,
So-
that's been seen already in one department where they came up with cartridges for the printer they had so many they would have never used them.
Yeah, that's a good
and-
point.
Yeah, and then I mean I know what the department is, and I don't want to think it end up throwing that out per se, but
No, that's
it did
okay.
it did happen, and it was wasteful. They kept ordering the cartridges for the printer and it's the thermal printer, the heads there, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was wasteful because nobody else was using that type of printer. And when it came, we had 25 or 30 of those things.
And then when you have to replace the printer, you always have a different type of cartridge.
Exactly
I have
right.
that at my house, that, you know, I'm using an HP 02 ink cartridge. Well, now I'm using a 910 because I had to get a new printer.
Yep.
So,
Oh, I know.
no, you're right.
Buy a new cell phone, you need a new charger and you need all these new wires.
Yep.
And-
Well, that's done on purpose.
Yeah, I know, kidding.
But okay, so anything else on emergency management? I mean, I think supplies is going to be true of everybody, but
Well, that's not true, totally true, Tony, because I looked at that and a majority of them for the supplies, they had used, like I said, at least 75 to 85 or 90%. And some used just about all of it, 100%.
well, they used their budget, but now what's remaining in their closets?
That may be true.
And so my question is, do you need all that money the next year?
That's probably why we saw so much left over in that one budget that we discussed at the beginning of the review.
That goes along with an entire problem we have of lack of inventory on everything.
That's true.
So, I mean, I would really love to see it start with vehicles. But hey,
I mean,
paper would be nice.
I mean, now honestly, if you hire a summer intern,
Yeah.
if you can come up with a template for them, it might not be a bad task for them.
Yeah, we've talked about this so much about asset management. I mean, I worked for a company that we end up putting asset tags on, and once a year we do an inventory every department that they can track it down. That they can
Yeah, I
see.
mean, you could barcode everything nowadays.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you just wand it or whatever. It was really quick, and you had a sheet, and you go bang, bang, bang.
Well, we've been talking about this since what, 2016?
All right, so let's stay on track.
Well, we're-
Anything else on emergency management?
No,
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, so what do we do? Just go on to the
So-
next one?
No, last time we made a motion, so I would make a motion to approve the emergency management budget.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Bob seconded.
Yes.
Okay, now we'll vote. Anybody else have any comments?
Just one thing of caution. At some point, we may end up voting a yes on this, but we're going to have to put a number in on the sheet for annual town meeting. And I don't know how we're going to do that. I brought this up before, but that's just the point.
On this, it would, on emergency management, on something like this, it would just be the same number.
Yep.
Right. I'm not.
Right, I get it, Will. I get
Yep.
it. I was just pointing it out. Sorry.
Okay. All right, no further comment? All right, Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, next is development services. Any comments?
Let me see.
So one thing I did want to, as I was listening to the meeting, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was some confusion with a level budget versus level services.
Yeah.
Level budget means if we spent $10 million last year, that's all we can spend this year. Level services is we provided X services last year. We're going to provide those services this year, but there could be a cost upper or lower. And in this case, it looks like it's about 0.5% up. Just wanted to make sure there's a clarification on that it's not the same thing.
That 0.5% is over $400,000.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, just like any other budget, and this is why in some of the ones that we've already said yay to, I didn't want to get into the deep thing, because in each budget, there is at least one or two accounts that they underutilized. And for us to end up doing that, unless it's a large percentage, like we did in the first budget, I didn't make note of that in going over this stuff.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think one of the things that makes this year's budget more difficult for us to assess, if you're trying to compare it to last year, is last year wasn't a normal year, or this fiscal year is not a normal fiscal year because of the pandemic.
That's absolutely true, because if you look at 21, we don't know what it's going to be in Q4 yet, and that's a crapshoot right at this particular moment as to what we end up with because of the COVID, and especially for personnel support. I looked at that time and time again and said, personnel support in this particular year is going to suffer. Why is that? Because people can't go out to training and go out to some of the meetings that they would do for their function. So that's kind of that. But if you look at the FY20, well, let's look at that. 3/4 of the year was done before the COVID actually ended up at the end of March, beginning of April. So we only had 1 quarter, and I don't think the effect for that budget was as devastating as this coming year.
No, not at all.
What I worry about is sustainability. You know, that's what I worry about. I worry about not just this coming year, but the year ahead.
Well, and I know they've done 3-year budget projections.
Yeah, but we have nothing to compare this to, really.
Well,
no, but I mean, if you take it at face value of what a normal year looks like, and you project your budget based on that, I think it gives you a pretty good idea. I mean, there's certainly unknowns, like the Worcester County retirement, of how much they're going to raise. There's always unknowns, but my opinion is in the past few years, we've been set on at least on the right path. And as long as we stay on that path, I think we're going to be okay. We're not ever going to be a rich town where everybody's streets are paved every other year, but I think that personally think that we're moving in the right direction, and I see no reason to think we're not going to continue.
There are some things I have to agree with you, moving in the right direction. There are others I have to disagree with you, and I don't want to get into the details on that.
Here for
Okay.
days.
That's okay. Nobody said we have to agree.
So
All right, so development services.
back to development services.
Right. I was going to say the only question I would have, and it's I absolutely understand it under our present circumstances, but I didn't hear anything about how it was set up. I noticed that the building commissioner here has been jumped from 20 to 30 hours. And I don't remember if there was any discussion on
They
that.
did.
There was, Tony?
They did address that.
Okay, I just don't remember, but
He's out straight. He really is.
yeah, oh yeah, there's no doubt the increase with the type of work that we got right now is needed, just how,
I think
if it
that's what it
was-
was. It was an
yeah.
increase in construction and stuff that they felt that more hours were needed.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt in the last year, without a doubt. It's just a question of longevity.
Yeah.
That's all I was wondering.
Will they be, the question is are they gonna do like we've done in the past, never address it if that falls off and cut back on the hours?
Well, we'll see when
Well,
people around by then.
I mean, you got to kind of hope that they do, that they pay attention to what's going on, but
That's one of the things we're here for, though, too.
that's true.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments on development services?
Well, I have some questions about some of the things, but they're not that major that we need to take and end up saying that this budget is out of whack.
No.
Okay. I mean, I look at stuff where they have training and possibly this and that, part of me is hopeful that maybe they'll get to attend that training. Maybe things will straighten out in the next 6 or 8 months to where those training conferences will happen and they can do it.
Yeah, the only thing that I question, and it's on the 5700 account, and this is to address Bob's concern, and he's brought up about a vehicle and at 35,000 versus, excuse me, it's been taken off there. I thought that was passed by the capital. Sorry.
It was moved
It's
to
brought forward
capital.
as 25.
It was moved to capital and it was 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was something, if I might, Will, I'm going to go back to the 5100, I think it is 5110.
Yeah.
That's something that I believe needs to be addressed at some level here, because we are being asked to buy a new vehicle for basically town hall department heads to utilize when they have call to. But yet there's been no deduction in any of the mileage listed over the years for any of those departments affected by the new vehicle we're purchasing.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, Bob. As long as, if the mileage is, if say somebody has to go from town hall, I don't know, to Baldwinville for something, if they're allowed to claim that mileage, but using their personal vehicle, if they're using a town-owned vehicle, they don't get to claim that. And you're right, there should be an adjustment.
You'd think there would be an adjustment, and otherwise, is there a benefit? Because again, looking at it from the taxpayer, not from the employee standpoint, what's the benefit to the taxpayer if I'm paying now mileage and vehicle and fuel for that vehicle, insurance for that vehicle,
Right.
and all that stuff? What's the benefit to the taxpayer? And it gets, iffy.
But then again, maybe if somebody's using it and somebody else has to go somewhere, they have to use their vehicle. So it might be one of those things that
That's
It's a couple
why
year-
I could understand, and that's why I was saying there's been no deduction, because I can understand them having to leave something in each account for just that purpose, because there's going to be overlap.
Yeah, so maybe it just takes a couple years to get into a rhythm of who needs to use the vehicle when, and
Sometimes it doesn't make any sense to use a vehicle. If you're stopping on the way home to check a job, you're not gonna take the vehicle, turn around, and then have to
Sure.
go all the way back.
right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I did that job. I was on the Board of Health years ago, and I used my car all the time. We had a vehicle. It was when we were on Athol Road, and nobody used the damn thing. Sat there forever and a day. Luann, I know, does a lot of stuff, and maybe it'll be worth it to her, but
I was gonna say, that's what we'll have to see too, how it's used, because it's all is a little bit of an experiment, I think, because the last one wasn't much of a vehicle and it did sit in the parking lot most of the time.
Do we know what the rate per mile reimbursement is?
45 cents.
There you go.
I got it right in front of me, Tom.
All right, so anything else on development services?
I'm good.
Nothing
Okay.
major.
I'm good.
I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to accept development service budget.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, no more discussion? All right, Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right. Next is highway.
Vroom, vroom.
This is kind of one of those that you wish you could give them double what they have.
Zip up your shirt before you give your heart away. Did you see this? Thought this was interesting. We were told by the water department to expect a 10% increase across the board from last year's numbers. And electricity will go from 24,000 to 32 lump sum. Thought that was interesting.
Wait a minute, say that, which one are you talking about?
It was on it's in the budget book, and it's from Adam to Bob Zock. And budget change justifications, he says. And the bottom two are the water and electric. Said that water department, we were told by the water department to expect a 10% increase across the board from last year's numbers. And then electric will go from 24,000 lump sum to 32,000 lump sum.
Is there any explanation for that?
No, it's on page 114 of the budget book.
Yeah.
I just have the electronic version, so
Yep.
I'm just,
Yep. It's
Anyway,
114 to
I
360.
thought that was interesting.
Oh.
I just, is it the spreadsheet, Bob?
No, this is actually in the little write-up right after the
No.
organizational chart.
Okay, I gotta find that.
I'm looking at it on the town's version of it, so.
After the personal summary table, where the building and ground cemetery foreman is.
Well, I gotta figure out what day we got. I have so many emails. I gotta figure out what day we actually got the budget book.
Don't worry about it. I just thought I'd mention it.
Well, I mean, I think yeah, okay. Maybe we'll get back to that. I think that's something, I don't, if they sat there and said, okay, our costs went up 10% or this or that, I hope that there's a good explanation why.
Yep. Okay.
They're not necessarily governed by the town as far as the amount of raises they get.
I know, I don't understand that.
Well, that's been talked about and never addressed and no pilot. So we're just banging our heads unless the community comes together or the selectmen come together and they bang on it. Even then, I don't think it's going to change
Well,
with the present administration over there.
well, I think that I don't know enough of whether the way they do it now is good or doing it another way is better.
Well, they have salaries for some of the department heads, the smaller one where the individual is pushing 100,000 as the superintendent, and I think he's only got 2 or 3 people under him. So I mean that's a
All
disparity.
right, so now I'll throw this back at you, Will. How does that compare to other towns?
If you look at them in general, we're probably higher. Our rates are higher, but nobody wants to admit that the rates are higher. But if you go to I forget what the engineering firm, they put out a thing on the water every year. It's been brought up a couple of times, and I'm at the point where I'm sick of talking about it, because there it is in the book. It actually shows our water rates being on the high side, and people think it's on the low side. And I mean, we went to a meeting where they ended up, for the water department a number of years ago, they doubled the minimum that they charge. It's just a service fee, and there was no outcry by the community. Only a few people. That we couldn't even close the meeting down because we didn't have, and that was a small place. We couldn't close the meeting down because there wasn't enough people to take end up outcrying, and they doubled the service charge. So I mean, that's on the people that use water. I just.
Yep.
All right,
All right, so let's go back to highway.
highway,
Any issues with highway?
I do.
Okay.
I have an issue with the transmission flusher.
With the what?
Transmission flusher.
Okay.
I'm a part-time mechanic, you know. Not really. But a transmission flusher is something I doubt we'll use. If we have a problem with a transmission to the extent that you need that, we probably would send the work outside of the highway department.
Not necessarily.
$5.
How much? Okay, tell me which line item you're looking at. Which account is it?
It's
Just
under 5,700.
Yeah, but
Okay.
they disallowed that, Bev. Adam's got 0 as a recommended for that.
Okay.
But it
And
should. But I have to agree with you. It probably shouldn't be there, but it's disallowed.
And what did they decide on the sidewalk machine? We talked about it a lot and then nobody said too much.
It'll be
That's
on.
a separate item.
It'll be on a. It's going to be on a town warrant.
Yep.
And that's it. The engineering change to footbridge at Stony Bridge, that's a lot of money. That should be on the capital plan too, right?
It is.
Okay. Other than that, then I'm good.
I think that got disallowed also by the capital committee.
I think the better word is not funded.
Yeah. Could do that very easily. Go down there with a couple of posts and a chain. Anyway, so I don't have anything else there. Do you guys?
The only thing I see from year to year is the maintenance budget is, and it has been, it's a little lower than it has been in the past. And that's probably we have some new equipment and we have some less equipment. But that's got to take and end up changing over time when we get newer equipment, or at least try to maintain. I know that there's an individual that I've talked in one of the garages that has been very, very critical in the past as well as now about our maintenance of vehicles. He was a little bit happier with the mechanic that we had. He's no longer here. I'm not sure how he feels about the new mechanic, but it's just the maintenance of the vehicles has to be kept up since they're older, and the fleet is old.
Yeah. So I have to say that I put faith in Bob Sozik that he's hiring the right people for these positions. I mean, you got to have a certain amount of faith in your department heads that do the hiring of these positions, that they're hiring qualified people to fulfill them.
Or trying to, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most part, we have a good crew.
I think we have a great road and ground crew.
Living out here, I have depended on the highway department my whole life. It was 3.5 miles from town. And they've been good whenever I needed them. If I need them to put up a sign because there's a big pothole they've always been good.
Yep.
With them. I'm good to them too.
Okay. Anything else on highway?
No,
No, I would make a motion that we approve the highway budget, highway
second,
services budget.
We have a second by Bev. All right. Bev?
Can I ask a question
Oh,
first?
of
Tony?
course. Sorry,
Oh,
Bob.
sorry.
I just wanted to verify because I stepped away for a second. Does this include their capital budget?
No,
Or are
I
we
think that
separating out capital?
I think capital's separate.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the way I was looking at it. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Please continue.
Okay. So then Bev,
yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes,
and I'm a yes. Buildings and ground.
I have some issues with things in their budget.
Okay.
Not necessarily with the individuals that work, but we seem to end up thinking we only have one field in this community. I'm disheartened in the fact that we have a field in Otter River that's not necessarily kept up as good as it should. We have one in East Templeton that I looked at it last year. I can't say I looked at it this year, and I thought it was in deplorable condition. And here we are, we're going to end up spending all kinds of money for Gilman Waite. And even though we ended up doing weed and feed last year and have monies left over from there, I still see $9,000. And I tell you, I searched high and low to think and try to find a community that ended up putting weed and feed on their fields, unless it's a real large community. None of the communities I looked at about our size did anything like that. It just boggles my mind. I don't think we need it to think and end up having a field that looks like Fenway. I mean, the individual lived in Gardner. He ended up using the recreation facilities in Gardner, and Gardner over the years, because I lived next to the playground, plastic playground, for many years, and I never saw them, other than cutting the grass, use weed and feed or irrigation. That's just something that didn't happen.
Well,
And they didn't do it on any of the other fields that were there, whether it was Greenwood or Jackson or Oliver Case. I mean, the
When
only
I-
one. Go ahead,
the
Bev.
The last time I went to the East Templeton field was probably a long time ago, before I got married to John and he wrecked his knee sliding into third base. I don't even believe anyone uses that field anymore.
Yeah, they well, okay, so I know you're talking about Cottage Lane, right?
No,
Yeah, so
Mhm.
now it's been 10 years, but I know Little League teams use it for practice.
do they?
Well,
I
they
don't think they
did.
do anymore, Tony.
Okay, I'm just talking about 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, and the reason I mention it, and pardon me for jumping in here, but I just went and visited all the fields. went around, took some pictures, did a whole bunch of, oh my golly, oh my geez. I can't see any kids playing ball at either Otter River or Cottage because the backstops are curled up and falling down on both of them.
Okay.
It's just
I thought-
there.
I thought the middle school used Cottage Lane for soccer practices, and I don't know. I don't know
they
anymore, be honest.
May of some sort, but I mean, the ball field, the actual diamond on both Otter River and Cottage Lane have just turned into grass. You
Okay.
can see white dots where the mounds are, but
Yeah, I haven't
that's
been
it.
by either field in a long time.
Yeah, it was a shocker for me when I did because they look like they get the grass cut, but that's it.
I mean, maybe it's a question we could ask: is what is the requirement for the maintenance of those fields?
Yeah,
Because I know for scheduling them, if I recall, for scheduling them, you had to go through the rec department.
well, there's a playground at Otter River that I don't
Right.
think should, I don't know the condition
there for
of,
years.
let's say.
Yeah, that's been there for years.
Yeah,
But buildings and grounds, look at the mess we have behind Town Hall. There's no loom there. There's no grass there. Templeton Common deteriorates every single year.
Yeah, you get a lot of that though because of the salt and the plows and.
It's a common, it should be taken care of, and it's not.
Well, I don't disagree with
Brett
that.
and we had 2 chestnut trees that Alan had planted.
So,
Treed those things.
so
Come up for 3 years.
may I suggest that we push this stuff off to a different meeting because that's not really budget related?
No.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but
Tony, I do have one comment from Scott Dill on YouTube, a few comments, so I'm just going to read them.
Mhm.
Cottage is not used by anyone. Otter River is in very bad shape. Otter River Playground is not up to today's standards.
okay. Thanks, Scott.
thank you, Scott.
So,
To me,
But I think
that's an
also-
issue, period, if we're talking about only putting all our eggs into one basket here in Gilman Way, what about these other fields? If they had been kept up, they'd probably be used.
Well, but also
know-
I know a lot of the population of kids sort of dwindled about 10 years ago. It went down to where my son's last year in Little League, we had 6 teams in the majors. The next year they went to 3. So I don't know. Maybe there's just not as many kids to use those fields.
Do they still use the Little League field?
Oh yeah, but that's owned by the Army Corps of Engineer.
Right, I understand that, but
but
I know they practice on other fields per se.
Well, that's what I was saying is when my son was there, we would practice at Cottage Lane. We would practice at Otter River when it was available. But
Yeah,
times change.
that's the same thing with my 2 sons.
So
They
I
would
guess
do the
as
fields.
long as the grass is mowed, then if
So-
that's all the requirement, I believe the rec department, and maybe Scott can comment, but I believe the rec department, I don't want to say is responsible, but they schedule those fields. Maybe they don't anymore, but as long as they're being maintained how they want them, I don't see what the issue is.
does anybody know if we put solid waste out to bid? Our solid waste on page 126 is astronomical. Really is.
Tony, I'm just going to read Scott did comment, 1 park at a time. Gilman is the most used in town. Gilman is the most up to date. That's why we're focusing on that right now. The others need so much work. And we schedule for all, but no request has been made for those fields.
They probably would be used if we kept them up.
Well, but
That's
it costs money to keep them up.
Well, we shouldn't be putting all our eggs in one basket here. I mean, some of the
Well-
monies that is going towards Gilman could be used to the other fields to at least minimum keeping them up.
Right, but if you
No.
don't need them, it's kind of a tough thing, Will, because if you can service everybody at one field, put all your money on that.
No, I have to agree with Tony. I mean, if Gilman Waite can host all of the events there, then it kind of makes more sense if we can't spread it all around. If we can make one field very nice and host all of the games there,
It should
I
be a
agree. I have to say do it there.
It should be a playground. It should be a playground. It should be a place where they can go play.
It would be lovely if we had the funds to do that, you know. I agree.
They should
But-
be at least decent enough so if the kids want to go play, they can, and they can swing because they should have decent swing
Yep.
set. You know,
Well, we have the playground. I mean, there's the one at the school that can be used during off-school hours.
And then the one at Gilman Waite. So
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Any other comments on building and grounds?
I'll make a motion not to accept the buildings and grounds in its entirety. I don't have a problem with all of it, but I think we should end up, for now, set it aside and decide whether we want to end up spending some monies on other stuff. I'll make that as a motion to not accept the
Well,
budget at this time.
Do you have specifics that?
I just told you one of my specifics is the fact that we're doing weed and seed, and I don't see any other place doing that.
Well,
I don't think we need a Fenway Park. Cutting the grass, that's, as I said, Pulaski Playground and all the playgrounds in Gardner were always cut. They didn't do weed and seed. And the
If
gra-
Will, which budget is the weed and seed in? Which line? I'm trying to
It's
find.
under Gilman Waite. it's the
5,700.
bottom- yeah.
5,700. Okay.
Yep.
Which line on the spreadsheet?
It goes down to, and it says Gilman Waite.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Now, if I might here, I would agree with Will, and for one reason, I made this point before. But right now, last year, there was 17.5 appropriated for Gilman Waite, weed and seed. And as of this last quarter, there was 14,200 remaining in that account, and they are asking for another 9. And when I asked about it, I got a nonsensical answer that didn't relate to my question. So,
Personally, I'd like to see that money that they're talking about weed and seed end up going for the accountant and get the full budget for the accountant, so that when we do get an accountant, to me that's a bigger priority than ending up putting weed and seed on the field. I'm sorry, that's my sense of thinking on this whole thing.
no, don't be sorry for
Well, he's-
believing what you believe.
so I've seconded his any motion, so just for
Okay.
point.
Okay, so we
Okay,
know
thank you.
the motion is to not accept building and grounds, to revisit it, I guess, at meeting next week.
I just want to read 2 more comments from Scott. Veterans Park has been talked about for Otter River. That's why it has not been discussed any further until the Veterans Park discussion is settled. And he is researching playground grants to offset the cost of the town for these other parks. So, thank you, Scott. Okay, continue.
The Veterans Park is being done by a separate organization, and now it comes into question as to if it's done, who's going to maintain it? And I haven't heard clearly if the Buildings and Grounds has bought into that. So
Okay,
I
we're
mean,
not talking about Veterans Park. It doesn't exist now. So
well,
so there's there's
It's
a
propo-
motion,
It's proposed.
right? So there's a motion to not accept the building and grounds budget and to revisit it. I'm just making the assumption we're going to revisit it next week because then after that's the annual town meeting, the pre-town meeting. And we have a second. Any other further discussion?
Did the irrigation stay here or did it go into capital?
That's
Or
that's under
CPC.
CPC.
from the CPC? All right, how come it's here?
It's not. You got to look at the far right column, column G, Bev. That's the amount allowed.
Okay. All right,
Okay, so we're voting, the vote is a yes vote means yes, you're voting to not accept the budget. This budget for buildings and ground. Okay, Bev,
yes,
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
No,
and I'm a no.
rolling right along.
Snow and ice.
No snow, no more snow.
I don't know about that, but
Don't
I hope-
laugh. I got snow on my azaleas when they were blooming and I had bees on them. Let's hope that don't happen again.
okay. Any issues with snow and ice?
Just wanted to point out if anybody saw the DLS report, that basically kind of gives us a warning about not raising the snow and ice to, a closer level that we use. And this year we're going up a whole $1, I guess, just to keep it on the positive,
Mhm,
because you can't go backwards.
right.
Um,
Yeah, and I think this was the first year we did all salt, right?
yes,
what I understand, yes.
Yeah, so I guess that's one of those things I think when you change methods, you always got to give it a couple years to see where it really levels out.
Yeah, that's just where the like I said, the DLS report came in, and I think we've been trying to get there, but it's one of those accounts that they love to spend because you can spend
Deficit.
deficit spend in it,
Right. So if you have to keep increasing it, you increase it by $1 to stay legal, then I think that's a good method.
Yeah. The one year that we ended
Doable.
up cutting back from the budgeted amount because we had financial issues really was detrimental in the fact that we had to take and end up at the end of the year actually paying that off because we couldn't end up they
Yeah.
wouldn't allow us to take and end up doing it unless we actually paid off the deficit there.
Yeah, so when you can deficit spend an account, you should always just approve it because if you lower it, you got to pay whatever it is anyway.
Yep.
And if you don't use it, it means we had a mild winter. So
It all depends on the philosophy of the community. Some communities end up doing real lowball because they know they can deficit, and they'll address it with end of the year transfers from other budgets or from the emergency reserve because you can end up doing that.
yeah, I think that's just a different philosophy. So I guess I'd leave it to Adam to what his philosophy on how he wants that account managed, and him and Bob discussed that.
The only thing I have on this whole budget was I have a concern. It says temporary plow driver.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that we can end up getting anybody for that amount of money to plow especially when they go out for 24 hours. That seems, when you look at the state, they get really good money for a guy in a truck, and we're not necessarily putting much money into this thing. I'm just as a concern. I'm
Yeah, but
putting
is
it
that
as a-
someone, using a town vehicle?
Yeah, that,
it doesn't say.
Yeah, so,
he
okay.
wouldn't be using his vehicle, that's for sure.
I wouldn't think that they would anybody would want to end up taking the job for that amount of money if they had to use their own vehicle.
No, that's what I mean is I wonder if it's using a town vehicle. I've never seen, doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but at least on my street, I've never seen anything but a town vehicle plow it.
Oh,
It
no,
had it has happened. I think one year that they did have somebody, but we haven't had it.
Okay,
they hired a couple guys that did up here that weren't ours.
okay. All right, so any issue with snow and ice?
Hmm,
Not since we can deficit spend it. Doesn't make any difference.
Take a motion?
I make a motion to accept snow and ice as stated.
I'll second it.
Okay, any other for comments?
No.
All right, Bev,
Yes,
Bob,
Yes,
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, next is Veteran Services. Any questions or comments on Veteran Services?
Yeah, I'm wondering why we have the community service director is 1 hour a week for veterans under veteran services.
Aren't they technically the department head for that?
Well, you got a veteran service director,
I know, but
and that's, to me, that's actually the person that's actually doing the work as the department head.
no, isn't Jackie the community services director?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think if you look, you'll see her hours spread out across like the library and the senior center and a few other places. And that just maybe she does provide some time to Sheila for that. I don't think this is new.
Well, I just think that we have a veteran service director that's doing a damn good job on taking care of the veterans. In fact, she's involved with the Food for Veterans
Oh,
program.
she is. She's doing a great job.
She's really out there. I can't end up actually talking and giving her enough credit, because she helped me out where some of the past directors were, they didn't do it or were unable. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously can't comment on past people, and I've been fortunate. I haven't had to really go to Sheila for anything.
no, I don't have any problem with anything.
Anybody else? No, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the veteran service budget.
Have a second? We have a second?
My
All right.
only concern, Mr. Chairman, is that the amount of money that for payments on behalf of the veterans,
Mhm.
to me, since we get 75% of it, I would think we would have ended up giving more to that particular part of the budget. That's the 5,700 account.
Well, she knows what she needs, it seems.
I mean, it's one of those things that
Well,
you know,
last year,
it's not predictive. It's hard to predict.
yeah, last year she had to come to us
I know.
for money, and I
Yeah.
rather
And
see
then
it.
actually the money, I think the money she wanted more. We didn't give her Well, because of whatever reason, we didn't give her as much as I think she initially wanted, but I don't think she ended up spending everything we gave her either. So, which is good. It's always good when they're not spending it for those type of expenses. All right. Anything else on this?
Tony, just one thing, Scott mentioned that Jackie is the director for Recreation, Veterans, CCTV, Liberty, Senior Services, so it's in all their budgets. So just
Okay.
confirming what you said
That's
earlier.
all right. Thank you, Scott. Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, senior services. Any comments or questions on senior services?
Well, it looks like we're going to have a lot of money left over for the senior services because has been closed down all year. And I know that they've attempted to end up having some activities, but not with this year's budget, but I'm saying I'm not sure how much it's going to affect this budget and giving them that much and them not using it because of COVID. We don't really have a good handle as to when we'll end up being in herd immunity or some of the variances. I mean, that's just I'm throwing that out as concern. Nothing specific, but it's just something that we need to take and end up watching.
I mean, me personally, I'd rather keep this fully funded in the hopes that we get out of it so we can start providing more benefits to our seniors.
Well, they're doing things now, even kind of like on an out, as much as they can. They're keeping in touch with people, and they've got things set up so people can pick activities up to bring home. They do
Good.
a lot.
Good.
Jackie, she is Wonder Woman. She has done an incredible job this year.
Yep, I agree. It's tough.
She's got help though, so this is good. She'll be good.
Okay.
If anything, we probably don't fund enough for the MOT drivers because of the amount of services that we have to take and end up providing for the elderly, going to medical appointments, etc., especially during COVID. I mean, it's difficult for them to get around to different stuff.
So if they need more money, they can come back. Well, we can't do that, right? From the reserve fund for
Yes, they can.
we can? Okay.
Yeah, they could.
And then,
All right,
we can't use it for salaries. That's all, Bev.
Right. All right, I'll make a motion, or I'll take a motion to accept the senior services.
I'll make a motion to accept the senior services.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion. Any further discussion? Okay, Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Library.
Library is alive and well in Templeton Center.
Good.
Yep.
Now, here's a case where if you look at the library, I believe we are not funding it as much as we should.
No.
And that would be the 5400 account. The problem is if we don't, we have to fund it to a certain level, and I think this is the minimum that it has, because I looked at some other libraries in other communities, and they're a little bit more liberal than we are with our library.
I mean, I don't know. I've only been in the library a couple times. I don't know how often it's used.
They have a pretty steady flow of people in and out.
Good.
People been picking up books and dropping off, so that's stayed active the whole time.
Good.
Non-COVID times, they're much more active than now because they end up having a lot of activities for the kids.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, I think my kids went in, they were young. All right. Any more comments on library budget?
I'll make a motion to accept the library budget.
No, I'm sorry, did someone second it?
I did.
Okay. All right. Any more comments? Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, recreation. All right, any comments or question on recreation?
It seems with the swimming directors and assistant has been addressed before that the no salaries in there. I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I don't remember why.
I think that they probably should have left it in case things open up so that people can do outside activities. You know, because the swimming program is so important.
Well, the swimming program, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and Scott, well, I'm sure will correct me if I'm incorrect here, but it was because there was, if I'm not mistaken, it was because there was no safe protocols set up for the swimming program.
Yeah, we'll see, it might change. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
I do
saying.
remember that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and if you think about it, the season for swimming is kind of short. So I don't know, is it going to change between now and then?
I don't know.
We just don't know. I thought there was another reason why, because Terry Griffiths said something about,
I can't remember.
because I think she was involved in it.
Yeah, it was because of the protocol for them
Okay.
to swim, especially with masks and stuff. There was some discussion on that.
Okay.
They haven't had any clear direction to that, and that's. I don't think you want to end up giving a kid a swimming lesson when they've got to breathe, per se, doing swimming. Not from what I saw how my sons were taught.
Okay. Well, breathing while swimming is pretty important,
Yeah.
as long as you're not underwater.
It's a little more difficult with a mask.
It is. All right. Any other questions on recreation?
I'm looking at some of the other accounts so you can see if there's anything that they should.
I think if I'm not mistaken, recreation's one of those that's pretty self-sustaining also.
I don't think they can charge a fee per se. There's nothing there's nothing set up for them to charge a fee.
What do you mean?
Yeah, there is.
Well, they
There
charge
is?
fees for youth softball, for basketball, for adult basketball. It's all through Unipay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fee for service type thing. You know, if you want a swimming lesson, you pay for that.
Well, swimming lessons were always free.
Oh, were they? Okay. Well, then I
Yeah.
correct myself on that. But I do remember like all the different soccer and softball and basketball, you know, you paid for each kid, and they figured out it was X amount of kid, because if you had to have uniforms, or they usually end up buying those, and then referees and whatever. But it's pretty self-sustaining.
Yeah, I know years ago we didn't end up doing that.
No, we didn't.
Because a lot of that recreation was handled by the town per se. In fact, if there's even in schools, I've seen it where if they have a multiple amount of kids from one family, that they don't charge the fee for every kid the
Yeah,
same.
they do. They give you a discount if you have multiple kids.
Yeah, and that might have, I mean, since my kids are out, I think they might have changed that, but I think it behooves us,
No,
it behooves us that they can end up giving free lessons.
our kids are way older.
All right, any other comments on recreation and culture? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass recreation and culture.
To accept it?
Yes.
Second,
Okay. We have it. All right, any other comments? Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yeah,
and I'm a yes. So that's the last department.
All right.
Let me look at the agenda. I have that somewhere.
You got insurance and benefits, Mr. Chairman.
What page is that, Will?
That's the 900 account.
No, but what page?
It's after the debt.
Okay, so I have insurance and
165
benefits.
in the budget book.
Yeah, I found it. Who's that?
Aren't these pretty much actuals? Or what they expect to be the actuals?
Not really.
Like where did? I mean, I know hospital copays and day surgery copays, that type of stuff is predicted, but
I don't think you can do much with this at all.
Well, this particular budget in the last 3 years has been over budgeted by at least $250,000. If you look at last year's, it was 2.4 and a little bit more. We took out almost $100,000 a year into year transfers, and we still ended up with 141,000. To me, going up from 2.4 to 2.5 with insurance that we've been told hasn't really skyrocketed per se from last year, and the fact, and if memory serves me right, the month of July was supposed to be with no cost per se. So I mean, I have some difficulties with this particular number. I don't like to see that amount of monies in with all the past years having so much extra. We definitely could end up using it in other places within the budget.
I agree with you. I agree with you. That's
well, do
crazy.
you have a specific, for example, okay, so I don't think that it's fair to take a lump sum of X to move to a different part of the budget. Where would you take the money from and why?
No, you
Oh.
as you can see, our administrator takes a general lump sum disallowance of 48,000. So you're telling me that we can't move monies from this account to somewhere else or suggest it?
And no, I did. That's not what I said. Well, I'm asking you from line 16 on the spreadsheet down to line 45, which of those accounts would you take? How much would you take from each account and why?
I don't think we have to be that specific.
Well, I
Mr.
absolutely do.
I don't
do.
think so.
Okay, if you're going to take money from account, you got to have a reason why. You can't just say, "Well, I think."
All
it should
right,
be that way.
all right. You tell me which account that the administrator disallowed 48,000, almost 49,000.
I don't know. I'd have to ask him.
It's a general disallowance because this is all under one account, and can be used anywhere on that account. It doesn't have to be used for a specific line item. If this, the budget accounting numbers have been changed such that we're not ending up paying so much for this or that. We have got to the point where we've got some detail per se, but it's one number, the 900 account, that you can end up using it anywhere within that. It's a 900, 5700. I mean, it can be used anywhere at the discretion of the administrator or the selectman, or where they need it. So I mean, I can't see that your point of taking one particular
Okay.
thing.
So if you look at, to me, when there's a lump sum disallowed of 48,372, you should look at column G and column H, and there should be a difference in those two, and there's not. I don't see it unless I'm missing one. It does show at the totals, and there's different numbers, but I might just be missing it, but I don't see where he pulled it from.
From the whole budget, he's done it this way. A disallowance. Now, I'm not going
Well,
to
that's
get
a
in.
philosophy. I mean,
Okay, well, he's
if
done
I-
it. He's done it throughout the entire budget. Are you going to end up getting to nitpick on his budget per se as to why he didn't take it out of a particular account? Then this whole budget is invalid because it doesn't show where he's taking the disallowance on.
no, it should.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't on any of the accounts. He has disallowance. Disallowance 10,000 here, 22 there, 48 here. I mean, we just went through one for the highway department, and he took out 22,000.
Wait, but what they do,
I didn't see
in the
you.
highway department, in the case of like the highway department, he leaves that up to the department head's discretion to where they can cut it.
And this is being left up to him and the selectmen as to where they're going to cut it or not have to use
Okay.
it.
But it doesn't make sense to have $140,000 sitting in this account.
I don't disagree with you, but do we know for sure that this year there'll be more?
Can I jump in here for a second, please?
Mhm.
Yeah. Now I've looked at this multiple times, multiple ways. Will's right in the point that for a number of years, this account has been used to carry roughly half of our 5% required free cash rollover
Mhm.
based on our financial management plan, which is roughly $250,000. That's been held, kind of played in this account for the past number of years. It's floated between roughly just under $250,000 and a little over $350,000.
Okay.
Last year it went down to 140. Adam brought it up. For whatever reasons Adam felt necessary to do that. Now, the thing is I've spoken to Will about in the past, and I've spoke at the last meeting about, is I would love to be able to actually go through the budget and answer questions like Tony had and like Will has. But because of this, $500,000 float amongst the account, and we don't have the number or the account or the place in which that money is stashed, in a sense, we are cutting blindly. We might be cutting free cash, or we might be cutting vital needs. We really don't know in an account. That's why I'm not really liking the idea about cutting individual accounts. I don't mind cutting things and items. But because I can't tell you out of this, 2.57 million here, let's say if the retiree bennies of 185,877, if that's a real number or if that's not a real number, I have no idea. That number could be 85,000 for all I know.
I guess that was my point, Bob.
Yeah.
You just said it a little more eloquently than I did.
Well, thank you for that, Tony.
Well, the administrator brought up the fact that he thought, and that his reasoning when we started the budget was that the unemployment number would be higher than what you have on the sheet. And as we just heard, the state has frozen the By the way, we
When did
can't.
the state freeze it?
Pardon me.
When did the state freeze it?
It was in this last week.
Okay,
It
so
came-
and when did the select board approve the budget?
when did they approve the budget?
Last week, right?
On the
So-
7th.
Yeah, so they probably didn't have that information to sit there and say, okay, unemployment is only going to be X, not the 45,934 you have in here. So that's why, so when you're looking at that number, you're looking at a number that he predicted, which you expect him to do, until the state came and said, okay, we've decided we're not going to do this. And you know as well as I do, sometimes the state makes last minute, if not late decisions on things. So you have to go with not worst case, but you have to go with information you know.
Well, all I can say is I don't agree with this number, and I think it should be lower. I think that they should go to other priorities. One of them being for the accountant, one of them being for other accounts to take and end up shoring them up. As far as I'm concerned, the fire department's not necessarily funding to the point where they should. And the fact that the emergency reserve, and I looked at the emergency reserve on a number of communities, and we're one of the lower ones from the communities I looked at. I saw $100,000 to $150,000 in some of the communities I looked at today.
That's because we had a town administrator that wouldn't let it be used right.
Well, but
Hopefully,
so you
well,
could say that, but the 3 years I've been on the committee, we've hardly used any of the money.
that's right.
That's because he hasn't allowed it.
No.
Yes.
No. See, that's a philosophical difference with you and I, Will, that I feel like as the administrator, his job is to try to solve a fiscal issue to every avenue he has to look before he comes to the emergency fund.
No,
Well, that's my opinion. So you
Yeah,
can't
no-
say no, but that's my opinion is he should try to solve a fiscal deficit within his authority as administrator. And then you use the emergency fund as a last resort.
Tony, you're allowed to have that opinion, but I differ from you because I've looked at other communities and it's done differently. And I
Okay.
mean, and I know you're going to say, well, you only care about Templeton. Well, hey, listen, this is how it's generally done as far as having the emergency reserve. That's the main reason for having the emergency reserve. And if the money was there and it's not used, it goes to free cash anyway.
well,
And
listen,
the TA has already said, at least in the conversation with me, he anticipates using the emergency reserve more. In fact, he was actually planning on using the emergency reserve for the loader, but there's not enough in the emergency reserve this year to end up even trying to get it repaired.
Okay, well. So I guess any other comments on this? I guess we still have a few more accounts. Realize that.
Well, then I'll make the motion to not accept the number that's there.
Do you have a second?
yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so if you vote yes, you're voting yes to not accept the number. Bev?
Okay, well, get some information.
Bev?
What'd you say?
And
On
I
the
didn't-
vote,
I didn't, yeah, we're voting.
Oh, okay. I said yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Bob?
No.
Will?
Yes.
Deb?
no.
And I'm a no. Um, I think next is capital.
Okay.
Kind of my philosophy on capital is we have a representative from our board that is on capital.
And just because you have a representative doesn't necessarily mean we should not take a position as to yes or no on capital. The same thing as what any other community
Okay.
does.
Okay.
They do vote
Do
on
you
it.
have any, does anybody have any comments on the capital budget
Okay,
or the capital plan? It's a total of, well, we'll round it off. It's a total of $1 million. About 959.
Phew.
Yeah, I have an issue with a couple of the things that they're pointing out on that.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, if we're gonna make suggestions, I got issues.
Okay.
If I might, I'll just go bring up one of them real quick. The thing that I think, and I believe it probably is a plan, but MS4 compliance, that needs to get out of capital, off of free cash, and be put in the budget. Because that's under DPW highway. It's the first item, 30,000.
Yeah, no, but what is MS4 compliance? Do you know, Bob?
It's the compliance with the state, I believe, for roadways, drainage, and so forth. It's part of Bob's job, DPW. But it's my understanding that we hire it out yearly. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of, I guess it's very time consuming if we were to do it in-house. And it came in, it's a requirement by the state. I believe it's the state, not feds. It came in a few years ago and Carter brought it in through capital because at the time you're saying it was unable to be financed in the budget, with the plan being to get it in the budget. And it's been an ongoing, kind of get it out of capital. And the last I knew, there was agreement that I don't think Adam was going to put it before capital next year, but
Okay.
it's a ongoing operating expense.
Then it obviously doesn't belong in capital.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, but I think if it's something we must pay and we know it's not in Bob's budget this year, it's almost like you got to wait to see if Adam pulls it out next year and puts it in the DPW
Yeah,
budget.
that's why I just, that's why I said if we're just making suggestions and so forth for next year, just to make sure, that comes out, that they know it. That's
Okay,
all.
guys.
This is where the transmission flusher is also, and
Yeah.
he's actually putting more money than what was requested. And as I have to agree with Bev, I don't see that that's necessarily a smart thing to do, is have a transmission flusher.
What page is that? Capital.
So I guess how much does it cost to have the vehicle transmissions flushed?
179, well, Bev.
Do we know how much it costs to have a transmission flushed on, say, one of the 6-wheel dump trucks by, a heavy equipment maintainer, or for all of that? So in the long run, are they saving money for the town by having this and doing it themselves?
I doubt it.
Okay, but what do you base your doubt on?
Because if you're changing a transmission, if it's an old piece of vehicle, it's an old vehicle. Unless you've got something wrong internally and you have to take the whole thing apart, you're not going to flush a transmission. My husband said you will ruin more transmissions by flushing them because all the sediment's on the bottom of the pan. If you're going to take
You
the pan off
and get the
motor
sediment
off,
I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know.
well, trust me. I really think this thing will sit in a corner somewhere if they ever spend the money on it.
Well, Bob said that some of the newer vehicles, you didn't have to worry about that, but he's got so many older ones, it's not a good idea to have a transmission flusher because we could end up causing more problems than not.
I guess I would defer to Bob Sozik on this, whether if he thinks he needs it. I'm not a mechanic. I don't play one on TV, so I don't feel like I'm qualified to say whether the town needs one or not.
Can't be everything, Tony.
I just found it rather ironic that we look for a transmission flusher after we screw up the transmission on the Volvo.
Well, I don't know what really happened with that, so.
Okay. Neither do I.
I don't think that's gonna save the Volvo.
No, I don't either.
No, I don't think so either.
The Volvo fixing it's probably gonna go somewhere else and get fixed.
The issue I have is everything under 10,000 in this in capital. It should be in the individual budgets and not in capital.
I thought it was 4,000. Is it 10?
It's 10,000.
It's
That's
actually 10.
That's by law.
So I think you kind of have a catch-22 there, Will, because you know as well as I do, if that's the bylaw, that's true. But if you just say it adds up to $40,000 worth of stuff, and I'm not doing quick math, so that goes into the highway budget, people are going to want to know, oh, what's that 40,000 for? So it's you're going to have people that want to know. I want to know if you're going to buy something tangible, even if it's $2,000. I want to see what you're buying.
Well, if it's in their budget, they can end up breaking it out just like they have it here.
Yeah, but they don't always do that.
Well, then they're doing it wrong. You know that, and I know that, and we should bring it up.
I think that having stuff below 10,000 on here is just being more transparent. So I don't see it as a big deal to me. I just think they're just being more transparent.
My thing is you can be transparent, but it should be in their budget when you get a bylaw that says 10,000. If you don't agree with the bylaw, then you need to take and change the bylaw.
So,
All right. Any more comments on capital? None? Do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the capital budget.
Do we have a second? I'll second it.
I'll second.
Oh, okay. Either I can second it. It's okay. All right. Any more comments on capital?
the bathrooms at Gilman Way. Oh, they're all right. They didn't put those in. Okay, we're good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we're voting. Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Oh, sorry. I said abstain.
okay. Will,
Only on the point that I brought up, I'm voting no.
okay. Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right. Sewers next.
I'll make a motion to accept the sewer budget as,
I guess we don't really get much of a vote, do we?
that's right, because we got the commissioners number one. And by the way, I've sat with the past superintendent over this budget, and they're generally more frugal than the town on in their budget and how they go about it. I mean,
Right.
that's just my opinion.
Okay. So Will has a motion to accept the sewer budget, and do I have a second? Does anybody have any comments on it?
No, they do a good job.
Okay, Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Did
Cable
I say
T-
yes?
Did I miss you, Deb?
I think so,
Thought
but
you
I'm a
said-
yes. I
I
can't
thought you
remember.
said yes. I don't
Getting
remember.
late.
It is. All right, next is cable.
I'll make a motion for this particular budget also is to approve this as submitted because the town, it doesn't come under taxation. It comes under monies that they get for
Yep.
from Comcast.
It's a self-licking ice cream cone.
I'll second that.
And they do a great job too.
Yes,
Okay, so I have a motion to accept and a second. Any more comments?
We have to say that as long as Steve is on here, that it's okay.
No.
We just went mute.
Yeah. Are we still live? No. No, I'll tell you what, they
We're still
have,
on YouTube.
I'll tell you what, they have really stepped it up with this COVID and all these Zoom meetings, and they should be really commended.
I concur.
Yeah, he doesn't have enough people over working that either.
No. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Bev,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And now I think that's the last.
That's the last one.
Let me check the agenda if I can find it.
Just says the next thing, well, there was discussed budget adoption and then adjournment. So
Well, I think that there are, based on what I heard from the last meeting and this meeting, there are some that we have to discuss next week.
Yep.
And then we have to figure out what we're doing with this because
I think just to take a week end up figuring out what numbers we have to do and where would be prudent.
Sounds like a plan.
okay.
And is our intent on this upon completion to send our review recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as just that, as a suggestion or our recommendation or our thoughts or?
Well, generally, the recommendation of the advisory committee is presented at town meeting as an alternative to the budget, and we're supposed to show them what what we're suggesting for a budget versus the selectman or administrator.
I think
we've
that
never
should-
really done that before, have we?
No, I think that's something that we should discuss because I looked over our bylaws today and nowhere in the bylaws does it say advisory committee should be submitting a budget to the select board or to town meeting.
No, we're
Yeah.
not.
We're not submitting a budget. We're submitting a recommendation on the budget as to higher or lower. And if you look at your association of town finances, that's our job.
I kind of looked at what the bylaw charges us with, and it's to either approve or disapprove the warrant articles.
Will is right.
Well, I'm sure you've gone looked at the association town finance, and it's right there. We're supposed to end up submitting a budget, our recommended budget to the town meeting. We represent the town meeting, and we present that, and they either vote for it or against it, or for the selectmen's. That's the process we've used. And in the past couple of years, we have not done that for whatever reason, and I'm not going to end up going down that road.
We do seem to have a little bit of a conundrum here because I agree with both of the statements here that the Association of Town Finance does say one thing, that is our job and our duties as the advisory committee of the town of Templeton. But then if you look on our bylaws, with the, I think it was the last rewrite or the one before that, many of the duties were, I think, changed, and we're basically at just where Tony said, as far as the bylaw goes.
Well,
So,
when they did the codification, they took some stuff out.
yeah,
Oh, nice.
so it just, where is the limitation and where is the override?
Well,
I gotta look at that.
we could always go to town meeting and make a substitute motion.
In past years, up until the last administrator, that's how it was done. He came along and he changed through codification or whatever, or how he wanted it done, and that has gone by the wayside. And that's not necessarily what the job. I don't think he necessarily approved of having advisory committees per se. He seems to have adversity as far as using the emergency reserve when there's been times when it should have been used, it wasn't. He ended up, especially in the case of you had a cruiser got smashed. We
Yeah,
had to
we're
take it.
rehashing old stuff, Will.
Yes, but I'm saying
I know, we've heard all this before.
but he had the opportunity and he didn't take it, Tony.
He's not the town administrator anymore.
I understand that, but
Oh,
that's when things changed, when he was there. Before that, we were doing that.
Okay. And before that, before he was there, we had zero in stabilization fund. So if you're going to criticize him for something, you got to also compliment the
That's
build
gone.
the stabilization funds up.
Yeah, right.
Do we not have money in stabilization funds that we didn't have 4 years ago?
4 years from now, Tony.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're not unmuted. You're just kind
I
of
said-
moving back and forth.
Watch and see where we are 4 years from now.
You don't know, and I don't know. You always make those statements, Bev, but what's your facts behind the fact that you think we'll be below or above?
Buy a bottle of wine and I'll sit down and I will explain the whole thing. to you.
4 years ago, would you have said we'd have almost $1 million in stabilization right now? Would you have said that 4 years ago?
We've had $1 million before. And
No,
you know,
but we didn't. 4 years ago, we had almost zero. It all got used in 13 fiscal years 13 through 15, 16.
Tony,
This town was decimated.
that's a bad analogy. We didn't have the revenues. If we didn't have the revenues,
No, you're missing my point. Will, you're missing my point. I was addressing Bev's comment of let's see where we're at in 4 years ago. 4 years ago or 4 years from now, rather. Okay. I don't know where we're going to be. Just like 4 years ago, nobody knew where we would be. That's what I was addressing. I don't know where we're going to be. I hope that this town administrator keeps us on the path we're on, and we continue, even if it's slowly, to build those accounts.
well, and I'm addressing your thing about we have, excuse me, where we got the $1 million from. If you take a look at years before he came, we didn't have the revenues that we have today. So that's the difference there. Yes, he made some changes. Yes, he ended up coming up with putting in money into stabilization, but the revenues were there in order to do it. So it takes more than just one person to end up making things happen.
Okay. I mean, I just find that you always want to kind of pound on what Carter did bad, but you don't want to give him credit for anything that he did to turn the town around financially.
well, he dummied down the budget so that And we had the worst town meeting in the whole world last fall.
That's not his fault.
Yes, it is.
How is it his fault?
So I totally want to bring us back around. Bob made a good point that, we're kind of at a crossroads where there's a disagreement as to how we proceed forward. So kind of bringing our focus back around there. How do we want to proceed tonight?
Good point, Deb.
I think we have our normal meeting next Thursday. That I think any of the items that were not approved, if you will, they should at least be addressed. So if anybody wants to put numbers into them, you can't just say yes or no. You got to have numbers and you got to have reasons why. And then I'll leave it to Tom to say, okay, are we going to vote as a committee? Are we going to present an alternate numbers either to the select board or to the town?
We usually, advisory usually presents that to town meeting.
Well, we haven't voted to do that yet, so.
I'm telling you, that's the process. If you want to take and end up junking the process, my question is what's your justification for doing that when that's the process?
My justification for not doing that would be, I agree with the town budget. I'm saying that. But if you want to change it, you got to have detailed reasons why you took X out of each account and why you did that, so people understand. You can't just say, I thought it was too much.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, we didn't take monies or disappointed on everything. We actually added money.
I know,
to the
I
account.
watched the meeting well, but even if you add money, you have to say, we added 15,000 to the accountant because we know we need that funding for a full-time accountant, which I agree with you.
And when the
Okay.
time comes, explain
But
that to
any place where you make an adjustment to the budget that you're going to bring to town meeting, you have to have a solid, concrete reason why you did that. You can't tell the town people, well, we're the advisory committee, this is just what we think. You
Don't
can't say
worry.
that number's high because, well, I think it is.
Well, we'll manage nicely. Thank you.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you
know
can't
that. know
do
that.
it.
You
You just
know.
you got to have a solid reason why you want to adjust it.
Rather than continue this, let's just do what Deb said. Agree to disagree on this particular point. And is there anything else on the agenda, Tony, before we end up adjourning?
Not that I can see. Well, the next meeting will be next Thursday as our normal meeting.
You did
Then
very
I'll-
good, Tony. 10 points.
What's that?
You did very good.
Thank you, Bev.
Then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
All right, Bev. Okay,
Yeah.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will,
Yes, because I want to make sure Debbie gets her night's sleep.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Hey, Bev, don't get off yet. Hannah, you can stop recording.
Thank you all.